Okay. Sophie.
Yes. Very good.
Okay, this is the House Committee on General and Housing. And today is the 6th of May, right? Is it?
Yeah.
All day.
It
And
is.
we are finishing up committee discussion for this round on S 120. So the committee has taken 3 straw polls, had extensive discussion. And we asked ourselves, what could we do that would maximize the amount of work for our legislative council? And came to a conclusion. Actually. So what we'd like to do is another draft of the bill, and the next draft of the bill, which hopefully will be the final markup that we would do. And help me out, everyone. It would, number one, of course, strip out all the stuff that was taken care of by Commerce and workers' comp. That's gone. It will include everything on the supervisors in the courts. It will include everything on decertification. And it will take out everything on certified payroll. However, with respect to certification, it should be expanded to include all statutes. What have I left out?
That seems like. So,
Yeah.
I make a motion, no.
And that way, and then when you tell us you're ready, I mean, we do want to. For some reason, I keep hearing from approach that it has to go to approach, but I don't think it does. It may have because it once had money in it, but then they stripped that out and put it in the budget, and there's this rule. I think the rule is that if there's a whip of money, it goes.
That's what happened today.
To approach. But otherwise, I think it is advisable for us to try to get it out of here this week.
So, yeah, so Sophie Zagani for the Office of Legislative Counsel. Originally when it originally left Senate Economic Development, it did have an appropriation in for the Vermont Labor Relations, which then got taken out by Senate Appropriations before it went to the Senate floor and then came over here. So it did originally have an appropriation in it.
That's.
Yeah, okay.
I just have a question. So
Elizabeth.
what do you need the next draft to look like? Because what you ran through sounded like what's in the current draft amendment.
Well, except with the exception of omissions.
No, she did them in the current. The current draft took out the payroll. That's.
Oh, it did?
You were, she was ahead of us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'd already asked.
she was ahead of us.
Oh, she took out, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I haven't seen the latest.
So then I think the only change would be the ones
That's correct.
that technical change you have discussed.
Okay,
He wasn't there before.
thank you. I'm sorry,
That's okay.
I missed it, okay. All right.
As you said, you were maximizing my work and it sounded like.
Sounds like-
It's like I already did that.
well,
You're just
ahead.
that good.
So essentially it's just the one change to the State Labor Relations Act, just to be consistent, just catch that one section that I missed before.
And also, did you go ahead and, has she already made it apply on the other statutes? Oh, wow, she is ahead of us.
Yeah.
An entire day ahead of us, yes.
Is there any chance that we are going to do anything with H-173? And would this bill be a good bill to attach it to?
Right, no, we're not going to do anything with H-173.
Why?
What I thought I talked to everybody about that, but maybe I haven't. I feel that H-173 is, I guess this was the first time then that I'm exercising my prerogative as a chair to leave it on the wall for the moment. And I have told the advocates of that we might consider taking up in the future, but we're not ready to do it now. Shall I go into some detail on my feelings about this at this point?
Yeah, I'd really love to know. what your
Okay.
feelings are.
There's sort of two regimes, if you follow the testimony, that you should have somewhat equal bargaining power. One regime is a right to strike, and on the other side is a right to impose a contract. And theoretically, if a strike is then called, fire the people who are striking. That has happened once before and produced enormous disruption and a lot of conflict in the state. Eventually, the firing of the employees and the hiring of other people was deemed to be an unfair labor practice. Not that it is intrinsically, but in that case. And so everybody who'd been hired had to be fired and everybody else had to be hired back, and it produced a lot of disruption and concern. The current regime is, as you remember, fact-finding, and then failure, if there's still impasse, binding arbitration or arbitration in front of the VLR, before an arbitrator or before the VLRB. And either the VLRB or the arbitrator must choose one of three options. They must choose the last best offer of the employees, the last best offer of the employer, or the fact finder. They can't cut the baby, they just have to do that. I feel, first of all, that although I am unpersuaded by a lot of the evidence I heard from UVM, it was obvious to me that this process worked. It did exactly as it was supposed to. As soon as the fact finder came out with an opinion that favored the union, management agreed. And they didn't have to go to binding arbitration. I also feel, and although I have admittedly, I would call it a conflict in fiduciary duty, because I'm the legislative representative on the board of the Vermont State Colleges. We heard a lot of testimony about how disruptive a strike would be. Some of it I felt a little exaggerated in the case of UVM, but not in the case of the Vermont State Colleges, which are half funded by the state. And I feel like if there was a strike there, it would destroy the college. That would be it. I think there was a lot of testimony, do you remember, about timeline in which the unions were contending that, and they showed us the differences in timeline under a strike regime versus one that didn't have, that was the other. And argued that timeline, that difference was produced by the right to strike. We got testimony from the Vermont State Colleges to the contrary, that in fact it took longer. They admitted it took longer because it's a longer process with the fact finder, et cetera. And they argued that's the way it is and that's how it's supposed to work. I talked to a number of people on the committee and I got the impression that it would be a very close vote as we could get that out of here. I asked, not say this. I asked leadership how they felt about it, and of course, what they did is ask me how I felt about it. I told them how I felt about it, and they said something that was new to me. Mark, if you are the chair of the committee, if you are not in favor of it, it does not move out of committee. Normally, I have to admit, I'm a little uncomfortable with that. And normally I would not take that decision lightly, et cetera. But given what I saw as a very controversial and close vote, I decided to tell them, the unions, I'm not ready to move this out and take the responsibility myself. I think that's about it.
And do you think that this would be a good vehicle for the Human Rights Commission expansion? Jurisdiction expansion?
My mind.
Jurisdiction expansion.
Can I
I know what
ask
she's
a
talking about.
question of your question?
I'm just trying
Do you
to,
mean putting 173 on the human rights or putting the human rights on S-127?
Putting the human rights on S-120.
Okay,
No.
sorry.
No, 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 no,
75,
no,
sorry.
75.
I know what you mean. Another 120 bills.
you're talking about your bill, which was one, right?
Yep.
Yeah, she's talking about, just to clarify.
Sorry, I got myself all confused
Yeah,
listening.
she's talking about the bill that would give the Human Rights Commission authority over certain in
Statewide.
Statewide office holders.
statewide office holders and
When there is a complaint filed from our body against a statewide office holder or
right,
other office holder in which there's a power dynamic.
right. And
And so my thought being, the germaneness being that we are, in a sense, employees who want to file a complaint against.
right, I'm not saying it's not germane. As you and I discussed, I think that bill, that is your bill, would need a lot of work because it turns out that HRC jurisdiction, it would have to be HRC jurisdiction over constitutional office holders would be unconstitutional. And HRC jurisdiction over us would be unconstitutional unless we allowed it. And we would have to guarantee that its jurisdiction was only to matters that were, what's the word? There's a term of art for core, the core function. The legislature cannot delegate to another entity jurisdiction over any of its core functions. We would have to clarify that the delegation to the HRC was not a core function. We were not delegating a core function. We would have to have some process for determining that, such as putting it where they would respond to complaints and that their power would be investigatory. But all of that is doable.
But
It
it's
just
not
works.
the jurist part would come back to our body.
Right,
It's just that
would be a recommendation,
just an investigation.
an
Partial
investigation. Yeah,
investigation.
I think it's doable. All of that is doable. It's just work. It
I mean,
just takes work.
constitutionally, we have the ability to judge, or we have the responsibility to judge our own selves. But
We can delegate the investigation
But we
as
can
long as
delegate.
it's not non-core function to HRC. I don't think there's much we can do about the lieutenant governor, the secretary of state, or the governor
treasurer,
or treasurer.
Auditor.
Yeah.
Auditor.
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 I'm adding all.
No, actually, we could make it.
Just the
that's okay.
auditor.
No,
I wonder if,
so
Yeah.
I think the answer to your question, my own view is, this is something we could take up, but not on the schedule of this bill. And I'm willing to take it up. I just think we just have to direct, who would be counsel on this?
Sophie,
Yeah, I think we just have to direct Sophie that we wanted to, and we could either decide we could leave it on the wall, tell her to redo it, leave it on the wall,
ask her.
ask her to do it. We could order her to do it. And leave it on the wall. We could request that she do it and hear it this year, even if it doesn't reach crossover. There is an advantage. There's only one advantage to waiting. I mean, the problem with waiting is waiting, right? The advantage is if we pass it out this year, if we could, it would go to Senate rules and it would just sit there in their box. If we pass it out next year before crossover, they have to take it up. So but we can do that. I mean, we can definitely do that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, if you were gonna react.
Think about what you want to do.
It's currently a short form, so it would require
Yeah.
something to be drafted.
What did we end up doing with the funding requests? Like,
We
we
put it in
didn't
the
get-
budget.
right, but
Well, no.
they got two?
They got
base.
They got some. Listen, I haven't looked at the
Okay.
Senate budget, so I don't, and then there's, right
Oh, yeah,
now,
the
is they're
Senate.
having, I don't know how they came out.
Is that for the,
Interest.
so the Human Rights Commission got 2 positions and the Vermont Labor Relations Board got 2 positions
In the Senate.
in the Senate budget.
I just don't think the VLRB
That's
positions
what
are
they-
gonna survive.
That's what they got in-house too.
No, they
That's
didn't,
it.
VLRB,
No,
No,
the,
the
HRC, I
So-
think the HRC is gonna get 2 positions.
but I think that was the minimum.
My understanding is right now, anything that the House and the Senate agreed on is staying within currently. And then I think they're looking at other disagreements and that's where they're gonna start. So, and I'm making a broad assumption when I say that. That's
Well,
been
that
from
makes sense.
my conversations. So I would say I would feel more comfortable saying that it probably will remain in there if there was an agreement.
It's 2 positions.
But that doesn't have anything to do with this. I mean, this is just,
Sorry.
and it's,
Well, only in that if we're giving them more work, if you,
Correct. yes, and
but it wouldn't be very, it wouldn't be very.
Hopefully-
No, hopefully it's not often
Hopefully
at
it'll
all,
never
like
happen.
very rare. I do also support that bill and I think that it was an error that we didn't work on it in our previous time when it was brought up the first time and yeah, I think that should have been something we worked on last session that didn't, but that's another story.
Well, let's talk about it, but first, I want to ask you, Sophie. So that we can have a planning session when we finally adjourn today. How long do you think it'll take you before you have the slightly revised version of 125?
I mean, I could maybe have it back for tomorrow.
Okay, soon, right away. Okay, so we could move 125 out of here pretty quickly. Okay.
And on the agenda, it says possible vote,
Yeah,
so
right, okay. And then,
I refreshed.
It's always said that.
Wait. What's the number of your bill?
HRC one is 429, page 429.
So. I think Elizabeth, are you up for asking her to produce a full draft of 429? So just a short form, because, I mean, we can.
You voted off the wall though first.
Yeah.
We would
He
take
has to-
it off the wall and do all that. We could do that this year. I don't know that we would get it out. The question of whether we want to get it out or we want to just get it as far as we can and then hold it till next year is an interesting question. See, if we get it out and we put it over in the Senate, then it's out of our control. It's in the Senate's control.
do you know which committee it would go to in the Senate?
I would have,
Probably the GovOps.
yeah,
Why wouldn't it start in GovOps here?
It arguably could. I think just because it was the Human Rights Commission, but I know there was a bill on the office to
Why did we end up with
New
a?
Americans and things which are all a GovOps. So I don't,
Yeah,
Portfolio.
I tend to agree and assume that it will go to GovOps in the Senate.
And here? Does it have to be?
They might have to touch it.
Yeah, they
I'm
have-
sure they would have, the Senate Economic Development would probably have to touch it, but that's my
Well, why did
assumption.
we get it?
No, I would assume that our GovOps, House GovOps would end up having to touch it, but I wouldn't assume that.
No, I mean, our
That's,
GovOps would probably have to touch it. if we
Well,
vote.
either that or we could ask that we be relieved of it and
I mean,
go
we
up.
got it because we do justice
Yeah,
issues.
Right.
But not judicial issues,
Mhm.
and that's why we got it. Makes sense for us to have had it, but on the Senate side, it doesn't, they don't. Their functions are a little bit different than
Yeah.
ours.
Well, I think that there's a couple bills that we had talked about working on still as we have a few weeks
Higher-
left.
There's temperature,
Temperature,
which Sophie's got
right?
pretty much
And I
quickly.
think this is another one that we could.
Yeah, but I think that, let's. Is there any reason why we shouldn't ask Sophie to draft a long form of the bill? Do we have to take it off the wall and vote for her to do that?
it's a
Yes,
short form, so it has to be voted by the committee to take it. on.
I move. Would love discussion, but I'm just gonna say it. I move to take Bill short
429.
form 429 off the wall and have Sophie pretty please work on language. Please, and thank you.
I think we do a hand raise.
Wait, someone has a second.
Oh.
Second. Here you go.
So this is just to take it off the wall.
Take it off the wall and have her draft.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure,
So say
okay,
we
all
all.
right,
Sure
Sharon,
works.
okay. We just have some tactical things we work out.
I just don't, how long do you think it would take to pass that bill out?
If it's going to go up, I have no idea.
Well, just pretend for
Okay.
funsies, let's just say it's not going anywhere, that it's not
Okay,
even,
well,
that it
then
doesn't even go to the Senate, just for,
Well, I would say, would we do it this week or would we do it early next week?
Probably early next week.
Early next
Probably
week.
ex-
So we get on, if it didn't go to GovOps, it would just get on the
Let's do
floor next
money and
week.
stuff.
Next week. And then if it was passed out of the floor, then next week, then it would get to the Senate late next week or early the following week. And I don't know what, remember, anything that goes to the Senate now, any bill goes to the Senate rules box and does not get out of the box unless the chair of a committee requests it and the Senate rules goes along with it, which they do. So somebody over there, one of like GovOps or somebody would have to request it. And I don't know if they would get it done in time. I just don't know, but it's in their control. We could get more advice on that. You know, I just think that's a very interesting, not obvious choice. That's all I'm saying.
well, it was, last biennium, it was Senators, Shim and Vihovsky who. You were, where were you? No, last biennium, it was Senators Hashim and Vihovsky who had it drafted on that side, then it came to us. It's almost, what we have now is almost verbatim of what last biennium's bill was.
But we don't, was it ever a long form bill?
No,
It's just short form. It's, I don't.
It looks like it was in the
So
House
let's-
last,
Let's talk about this offline.
page 843.
So we voted to take it off the
We
wall.
voted to take it off the wall. Let's talk about, well, when we get there, we'll figure out what we're gonna do.
Okay.
There's no reason, by the way, we couldn't discuss it, take testimony and hold, and we could do that. I mean, we have a power to do what we want. Okay. Anything else, members of the committee, for today? Can you stay for a few minutes so that we can have a little meeting about
I
our
am
next?
trapped, so yes,
You are, okay,
until corrections gets back from your field trip.
okay. Any other matters? Tomorrow, we're assuming, I'm sorry, I don't have my schedule up. Magali,
Correct.
what does the current schedule say?
For tomorrow, we have Sophie from 9 to 12 for committee discussion and possible vote on S-125.
Okay, so let's just say 9 o'clock tomorrow. Okay. And then we'll see, we're gonna have an agenda meeting and try to figure out what we do, how we keep ourselves
Occupied,
Entertained.
entertained is different.
but yeah.
We can vote for it.
Are we adjourned?